Rome, 54 AD. The mighty Roman Empire stood at the height of its power. Its roads stretched across continents, and its armies ruled from Britain to the deserts of Syria. Gold poured into the capital from every corner of the empire. Yet hidden behind the marble temples and magnificent palaces, a dangerous storm was beginning to grow, a storm that would change Rome forever. Its name was Nero. For nearly 2,000 years, Nero has been remembered as one of history's most infamous rulers. People say he murdered his own family. They say he tortured innocent citizens. They say he played music while Rome burned. But how much of that story is actually true, and how much was written by his enemies after his death? Today, we're uncovering the real story behind one of Rome's most mysterious emperors. This is the rise and fall of Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, a child born into power. Nero was born on December 15th, 37 AD. His original name wasn't Nero, it was Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus. His family belonged to one of Rome's oldest noble bloodlines. His father, Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus, was wealthy but known for his violent temper and cruel personality. Ancient historians claimed that he once said, "Nothing good could ever come from a child born to me, an Agrippina." It would become one of history's most chilling predictions. But Nero's greatest influence wasn't his father, it was his mother, Agrippina the Younger. She was intelligent, beautiful, ruthless, and incredibly ambitious. She wasn't interested in living in the shadows. She wanted power, real power, and she believed her son would be the key to achieving it. The death of an emperor. When Nero was only 2 years old, Emperor Caligula ruled Rome. Caligula's reign quickly descended into madness. He demanded worship as a living god, spent enormous fortunes on luxury, and executed senators without hesitation. Even members of his own family lived in constant fear. Agrippina herself was accused of conspiracy, and Caligula banished her from Rome and confiscated her property. Young Nero suddenly lost everything. His father died soon afterward, and his family fortune disappeared. For a time, the future emperor of Rome became little more than a forgotten child. But fate wasn't finished with him. Claudius changes everything. In 41 AD, Caligula was assassinated by members of the Praetorian Guard, and Rome erupted into chaos. Many senators hoped to restore the Republic. Instead, the soldiers found Caligula's frightened uncle hiding behind a palace curtain. That man became Emperor Claudius. Unlike Caligula, Claudius was intelligent and hardworking. Many underestimated him because of his speech difficulties and physical disabilities that proved to be a mistake. Claudius expanded the empire, conquered Britain, improved Roman law, and strengthened the government. Eventually, Agrippina returned from exile. She patiently rebuilt her influence inside Rome, then made an astonishing move. She married Emperor Claudius. Not only was Claudius emperor, he was also her uncle. While such marriages shocked many Romans, imperial politics often ignored ordinary traditions. Suddenly, Nero became the emperor's adopted son. Everything changed overnight. The perfect prince, Claudius already had a biological son named Germanicus. By tradition, he should have inherited the throne, but Agrippina had different plans. She slowly convinced Claudius that Nero was more capable. Nero received the finest education available anywhere in the empire. His tutor was one of Rome's greatest philosophers, Seneca. Under Seneca, Nero studied philosophy, public speaking, history, law, and literature. He learned how emperors should rule wisely, at least. That was the plan. Agrippina also surrounded Nero with powerful allies inside the Praetorian Guard. One of them was Sextus Aphronius Burrus. As commander of Rome's elite soldiers, Burrus would play a crucial role in Nero's future. Piece by piece, Agrippina built a political machine. Every decision moved her son one step closer to ultimate power. A suspicious death. By 54 AD, Claudius was growing older, and Germanicus was becoming old enough to claim his rightful inheritance. Agrippina knew time was running out. Then Claudius suddenly became violently ill after eating mushrooms. Within hours, the emperor was dead. Ancient historians immediately blamed Agrippina. Many believed she poisoned the mushrooms herself. Others argued Claudius simply died from illness. The truth has never been proven. But one thing happened incredibly fast. Before anyone could organize support for Germanicus, the Praetorian Guard declared Nero emperor. He was only 16 years old. Rome now belonged to a teenager, the young emperor. Most people expected disaster. Instead, Nero surprised everyone. During the first years of his reign, the empire experienced peace and stability. Real power wasn't entirely in Nero's hands. His mother Agrippina, his tutor Seneca, and General Burrus guided many government decisions. Taxes remained stable, justice became fairer, and corrupt officials were punished. The Senate enjoyed greater respect than under previous emperors. Many Romans believed Nero might become one of Rome's greatest rulers. Coins were minted celebrating prosperity, and public festivals returned. The people cheered their young emperor. For a brief moment, everything seemed perfect, but beneath the surface, another battle had already begun, not against foreign enemies, but against his own mother, a mother who refused to let go. Agrippina expected to rule through Nero. She attended official meetings, received foreign ambassadors, and appeared beside the emperor during ceremonies. Some ancient coins even displayed both mother and son together. This was almost unheard of in Roman history. Many senators became uncomfortable. Was Nero truly emperor, or merely his mother's puppet? As Nero grew older, he wanted independence, but Agrippina refused to grant it. She criticized his decisions, controlled his relationships, and interfered with his appointments. Their argument became increasingly bitter. Then Nero met someone who would change everything. a beautiful freedwoman named Agrippina strongly opposed the relationship, believing an emperor should marry only for political advantage. Nero ignored her for the first time. He openly defied his mother. The balance of power inside the imperial palace was beginning to collapse. The shadow over Britannicus. Meanwhile, Britannicus was reaching adulthood. Many Romans still viewed him as the legitimate heir of Claudius, and his very existence threatened Nero's throne. One evening, during a royal banquet, Britannicus suddenly drank from a cup. Moments later, he collapsed. Guests watched in horror as the young prince struggled to breathe, and within minutes, he was dead. Officially, Nero claimed Britannicus had suffered an epileptic seizure. Few believed him. Rumors of poison, assassination, and murder spread across Rome. Whether Nero personally ordered the killing remains debated. But after Britannicus died, there was no longer anyone with a stronger claim to the imperial throne. Nero now ruled alone, and absolute power has a way of changing people. Britannicus was gone. The last serious rival to Nero's throne had disappeared forever. For the first time in his life, the young emperor stood alone at the top of the Roman world. No brother, no competitor, no obstacle, only unlimited power. But instead of becoming the wise ruler that Seneca had hoped for, Nero slowly began following a very different path, one driven by applause, luxury, and personal ambition. The emperor who wanted to be an artist. Unlike previous Roman emperors, Nero had little interest in military campaigns. He wasn't fascinated by conquering new lands or obsessed with expanding the empire. His greatest passion was something many Romans considered embarrassing. He loved performing, music, poetry, and acting, and above all, he loved hearing crowds cheer his name. To modern audiences, this may not seem unusual, but in ancient Rome, public performances were considered suitable for entertainers, not emperors. Roman nobles believed actors and musicians occupied one of the lowest positions in society. An emperor was expected to command armies, judge legal disputes, and protect the empire, not stand on a stage singing before thousands of people. Yet Nero ignored tradition. He practiced the lyre for hours every day, trained his voice with professional instructors, and memorized long poems and dramatic speeches. He believed he wasn't just Rome's ruler, he believed he was Rome's greatest artist. Life inside the Golden Palace. As Nero became more confident, his spending increased dramatically. Lavish banquets became more frequent, and the imperial palace overflowed with rare treasures from across the empire. Exotic animals were brought from Africa, silks arrived from the east, and marble from Greece decorated halls already covered in gold. Every celebration had to be larger than the last, and every feast more spectacular than the one before. Roman nobles competed to impress the emperor with expensive gifts, while ordinary citizens continued paying the taxes that helped support this extravagant lifestyle. Some admired Nero's generosity during public games, others quietly wondered how long Rome could afford such luxury. A new love changes everything. Around this time, Nero became deeply attracted to one of Rome's most beautiful women, Poppaea Sabina. She was intelligent, ambitious, charming, and already married. Ancient writers described Poppaea as someone who understood exactly how to influence powerful men, and she quickly gained Nero's attention. Soon, their relationship became impossible to hide. Nero's wife, Octavia, remained popular among the Roman people. She was the daughter of Emperor Claudius and symbolized stability, but Nero no longer loved her. He wanted Poppaea instead, a decision that would create another dangerous conflict inside the imperial family. Agrippina fights back. No one opposed Nero's relationship with Poppaea more fiercely than his mother. Agrippina believed Poppaea threatened both the dynasty and her own influence. She warned Nero repeatedly, reminded him who had placed him on the throne, and demanded respect. But Nero had grown tired of being controlled, and their arguments became louder, more public, and more dangerous. According to ancient historians, Agrippina even threatened to support another claimant if Nero ignored her advice. Whether this threat was real or exaggerated, Nero viewed it as betrayal. He no longer saw his mother as an ally, he saw her as an enemy. And in imperial Rome, enemies rarely survived for long. The impossible murder. Nero faced a difficult problem. Agrippina wasn't an ordinary woman. She was the mother of the emperor and belonged to the imperial family. Killing her openly would shock the entire empire. So Nero allegedly approved a far more unusual plan. Engineers secretly designed a luxurious ship with a hidden mechanism. The idea was simple. While Agrippina sailed home after a celebration, part of the vessel would collapse, and she would drown. The accident would appear completely natural. Everything seemed perfect until the plan failed. The ship broke apart, and several passengers died. But Agrippina survived. Instead of drowning, she managed to swim to safety. The failed assassination left Nero in panic. Now his mother knew someone had tried to kill her, and there was no turning back. The death of Agrippina. Soon afterward, soldiers arrived at Agrippina's villa. She understood exactly why they had come. Ancient historians described her final moments with dramatic detail. As soldiers surrounded her room, Agrippina reportedly showed remarkable courage. One famous story claims she pointed toward her stomach and declared, "Strike here first." The womb that had carried an emperor would now become the target of his revenge. Whether those were truly her final words remains uncertain, but the result is not. Agrippina died that night, around 43 years old. The woman who had sacrificed everything to place Nero on Rome's throne was dead by her own son's orders, or so ancient sources claim. Some modern historians believe these accounts may have been exaggerated by Nero's political enemies. Others believe the assassination almost certainly happened. The exact details remain one of history's greatest mysteries. Rome reacts. News spread quickly throughout the capital. Many senators were horrified, others stayed silent. No one wanted to challenge an emperor who had allegedly murdered his own mother. Nero attempted to justify his actions, claiming Agrippina had plotted against him and insisting he had acted in self-defense. Official speeches praised the emperor for saving Rome from conspiracy. but whispers filled the streets. Citizens wondered, if Nero could kill his own mother, what would stop him from killing anyone else? Fear slowly replaced admiration, and trust began to disappear. The cheerful young emperor of 54 AD seemed to be vanishing. A darker Nero was emerging. Marriage to Poppaea. Not long after Agrippa's death, Nero divorced Octavia. Officially, he accused her of infertility, but many Romans doubted the charge. Octavia remained enormously popular with the public, and when she was exiled, crowds protested. Some even decorated her statues in her honor. The protests only angered Nero further. Eventually, Octavia was executed after being accused of treason. Ancient sources suggest the charges were fabricated. With Octavia gone, Nero married Poppaea Sabina. For a short time, the emperor appeared genuinely happy. Poppaea gave birth to a daughter, Claudia Augusta, who was celebrated across the empire. But tragedy struck once again. The little girl died only a few months later. The imperial family mourned deeply. Nero had everything a man could desire, yet happiness remained painfully out of reach. The year was 64 AD. Rome had become the largest and richest city in the Western world. More than 1 million people crowded its streets, and merchants from Egypt, Greece, Gaul, and Syria filled its markets. Massive temples towered above crowded neighborhoods. The Colosseum had not yet been built. Instead, Rome was a maze of narrow streets lined with wooden apartment buildings known as insulae. These buildings were packed tightly together, most with no running water, no fire protection, and no proper escape routes. One small spark could destroy an entire district. No one imagined that spark would soon become one of history's most famous disasters. The night Rome burned. On the night of July 18, 64 AD, a fire broke out near the Circus Maximus, Rome's enormous stadium. At first, people thought it was just another small fire. Fires happened often in ancient Rome, but this one was different. A strong summer wind carried the flames from building to building. Wooden homes exploded into fire, oil stores fed the growing inferno, and narrow streets trapped thousands of terrified families. Parents searched desperately for their children while animals ran wildly through the smoke. People grabbed whatever possessions they could carry before fleeing into the darkness. Soon an entire section of Rome was burning, then another, and another. The fire became unstoppable. For 6 terrifying days, flames consumed the capital of the Roman Empire. Even after firefighters believed it was over, the blaze erupted again. By the time everything ended, 10 of Rome's 14 districts had been damaged or destroyed, and 3 districts had vanished almost completely. Thousands of homes were gone. Temples hundreds of years old had turned to ashes, and countless lives had been lost. Rome had never experienced destruction on such a scale. Where was Nero? One of history's biggest questions is surprisingly simple. Where was Nero when the fire started? Ancient records suggest Nero wasn't even in Rome. He was staying at his villa in Antium, nearly 60 kilometers away. When news reached him, he reportedly hurried back to the capital. According to several ancient historians, Nero immediately organized emergency relief. He opened public gardens to homeless families, arranged temporary shelters, imported grain to prevent starvation, and lowered food prices to help survivors. These actions earned praise from many citizens, but they weren't enough to stop another rumor, one that would follow Nero forever. Did Nero really play while Rome burned? Almost everyone has heard the story, Nero fiddled while Rome burned. It's one of the most famous legends in world history. But there's one problem: the violin, or fiddle, didn't even exist in ancient Rome. It wouldn't be invented for another 1,000 years. Some ancient writers claimed Nero sang about the fall of Troy while watching the fire. Others denied this completely. The truth is impossible to prove. Many historians believe the famous story was created decades later by writers who hated Nero. Others think Nero may indeed have performed music after returning to Rome, but not while ignoring the disaster. The real answer remains uncertain, yet the legend became stronger than the facts. For centuries, Nero became the symbol of a ruler who cared more about entertainment than his own people. Whether he deserved that reputation is still debated today. The search for someone to blame. As smoke cleared from the ruins, anger spread across Rome. People demanded answers. How could such a disaster happen? Some whispered that the fire had been an accident. Others believed criminals started it. But a darker rumor quickly appeared. Some accused Nero himself, claiming he wanted to destroy old neighborhoods so he could build a magnificent new palace. No ancient evidence proves this accusation, yet suspicion continued to grow. Nero needed someone else to blame, someone unpopular, someone powerless. He found them among a small religious group called Christians, the first great persecution. At this time, Christianity was still a tiny movement inside the Roman Empire. Most Romans misunderstood its beliefs, and rumors painted Christians as strange outsiders who refused to worship Roman gods. Nero accused them of starting the Great Fire. Whether he truly believed the accusation or simply needed a political scapegoat remains unknown. The consequences were devastating. Many Christians were arrested, and some were executed. The ancient historian Tacitus described horrifying punishments. Some prisoners were thrown to wild animals, others were crucified, and some were reportedly burned alive during public spectacles. These accounts have become some of the darkest pages in Roman history. Among Christian tradition, both St. Peter and St. Paul are believed to have died during Nero's reign, although historians continue to debate the exact details. The persecution shocked even some Romans, not because Christians were popular, but because the punishments appeared excessively cruel. A palace of gold. After the fire, much of central Rome lay empty. Nero announced an ambitious rebuilding program. The new city would have wider streets, stone buildings instead of wooden ones, improved fire safety, and better planning. Many of these reforms actually reduced the risk of future fires, but Nero also began constructing something extraordinary, the Domus Aurea, the Golden House. It wasn't merely a palace, it was a vast complex covering enormous sections of the rebuilt city. Its walls glittered with gold, and its ceilings were decorated with precious gems. Artificial lakes reflected marble statues, and gardens stretched farther than many villages. One enormous dining hall reportedly rotated slowly throughout the day. Visitors described fountains, rare animals, and unimaginable luxury. At the entrance stood a gigantic bronze statue of Nero himself. The emperor's dream had become reality. To many Romans, it looked as though their ruined homes had been replaced by one man's palace. Resentment grew deeper, the beginning of the end. By now, Nero's popularity had changed dramatically. The young emperor, once praised for justice, now faced constant criticism. Heavy taxes funded rebuilding projects. Powerful senators distrusted him. Military commanders questioned his leadership, and provincial governors watched carefully from distant frontiers. The empire still looked strong from the outside, but beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to spread. Those cracks would soon become open rebellion, and the man who ruled the greatest empire on earth would discover that absolute power could disappear just as quickly as it had arrived. The Great Fire had changed everything. The emperor, who was once welcomed with cheers, was now surrounded by suspicion. Every new tax created more anger, every new palace fueled more resentment, and every public performance made Rome's elite lose even more respect for their emperor. For years, Nero believed no one could challenge him, but across the empire, his enemies were quietly gathering. The final chapter of his reign was about to begin. The plot to kill an emperor. In 65 AD, one of the largest conspiracies in Roman history was uncovered. It became known as the Pisonian conspiracy. Its goal was simple: kill Nero and replace him with a respected Roman noble named Gaius Calpurnius Piso. The conspiracy included senators, military officers, wealthy nobles, and even some members of Nero's own inner circle. Many believed Rome could no longer survive under Nero's rule. The plan was carefully prepared, but before it could be carried out, someone betrayed the conspirators. Nero's secret police moved quickly. Hundreds of suspects were arrested. Interrogations began, and confessions followed. The emperor's revenge would be swift and merciless. The death of Seneca. Among those accused was one man Nero had once trusted more than anyone else, his former teacher, Seneca. Whether Seneca was truly involved in the conspiracy remains uncertain. Some historians believe he knew about the plot. Others think he was innocent and simply too influential for Nero to ignore. The emperor gave him only one choice: take his own life. Seneca accepted his fate with remarkable calm. Ancient writers described him speaking peacefully with friends while opening the veins in his arms. When death came too slowly, he reportedly drank poison, and when that also failed, he entered a hot bath, where blood loss and steam finally ended his life. To many Romans, the philosopher died with more dignity than the emperor who condemned him. His death shocked the empire and showed that no one, not even Nero's closest mentor, was safe. An empire ready to revel. By 67 AD, Nero spent much of his time traveling through Greece, competing in music festivals, poetry contests, and athletic competitions. Wherever he performed, judges declared him the winner, not because he was always the best, but because no one dared to defeat the emperor. Meanwhile, far from the theaters of Greece, Rome's political situation continued to collapse. Governors in distant provinces grew restless, and military commanders questioned Nero's leadership. The Roman army remained loyal to the empire, but not necessarily to its emperor. The greatest danger now came from the western provinces. The revolt begins. In 68 AD, the governor of Gaul, Gaius Julius Vindex, rose in open rebellion, calling on other governors to remove Nero from power. Although Vindex was eventually defeated in battle, his revolt inspired others. Soon, another governor answered the call, Servius Sulpicius Galba, governor of Hispania. Galba declared that he no longer recognized Nero as emperor. One by one, support for Nero began to disappear. The Praetorian Guard, once his greatest protectors, started negotiating with Galba. Money, politics, and survival proved stronger than loyalty. Nero still believed he could recover, but events were moving far beyond his control. Abandoned by everyone, as news reached Rome, panic spread through the imperial palace. The Senate held emergency meetings, and powerful officials quietly abandoned Nero. Friends disappeared, generals stopped answering his messages, and even members of his personal staff fled. Then came the final blow. The Praetorian Guard deserted him. Without the Guard, an emperor had almost no chance of surviving. The Senate officially declared Nero a public enemy of Rome. If captured, he would be executed in the most humiliating way possible. The ruler who had once commanded millions now had almost no one left. The last hours. Late at night, Nero escaped Rome with only a handful of loyal servants and hid in a small countryside villa belonging to one of his freedmen. For the first time in 14 years, the emperor had nowhere left to run. Ancient historians describe Nero pacing nervously, unable to sleep, unable to decide what to do. Again and again, he reportedly whispered, "What an artist dies in me." These words have become some of the most famous final words in history. Whether he truly spoke them, or whether later writers invented the quote, remains uncertain. Soon, horsemen approached the villa. Nero knew capture was only moments away. Unable to bring himself to commit suicide, he reportedly asked one of his companions for help. On June 9, 68 AD, at just 30 years old, Nero died. With his death, the Julio-Claudian dynasty, founded by Augustus nearly a century earlier, came to an end. the man, or the myth. For centuries, Nero has been remembered as one of history's greatest villains, a tyrant, a murderer, a man who supposedly watched his own city burn. But modern historians urge caution. Almost every major account of Nero's life was written after his death by authors connected to the Roman Senate, an institution that deeply opposed him. Some stories are supported by multiple sources, others may have been exaggerated, and some may even have been invented. Did Nero order murders? Probably. Did he become increasingly cruel during his reign? Most evidence suggests he did. But did he personally set Rome on fire? There is no conclusive historical proof. History often remembers people through the voices of their enemies, and Nero remains one of the greatest examples of that reality. Perhaps he was one of Rome's worst emperors. Perhaps he became far worse in legend than he ever was in life. The truth lies somewhere between history and myth. Legacy. Nero's death plunged the Roman Empire into chaos. 4 different men would fight for the imperial throne in a single year, and civil war returned to Rome. The empire survived, but it would never forget the reign of the young emperor who dreamed of being an artist instead of a conqueror. His name still sparks debate after nearly 2,000 years. To some, he was a monster. To others, a misunderstood ruler whose story was rewritten by history. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: few emperors have left a legacy as unforgettable as Nero.